each other. So what we'll do first is you just need to get an idea on who is here for what. So I think we've got 5 or 6 of you helping out and telling us about this. We got, I think, 4 or 5 parents and students listening in and trying to get information. So what we'll do is we'll start off, we'll try and keep it as informal as possible. And is there anyone here who doesn't understand Urdu? उर्दू में पूछना चाहिए था ये. I think जिन लोगों ने, whoever, if you haven't got your video on, I think it'll really help if you can turn your video on. This is no, everyone knows everyone here. I think there's hardly anyone who doesn't know anyone else. It'll really help to see you while we talk. So the purpose of this session is basically to try and get people who are applying to medical school this year, try and give them as much information as possible. I think the best way to do that is to have people who've done it already share their experiences and guide and mentor other people. And inshallah, once we this is the first time we're trying this, but if we manage to get this right and hopefully help people, then maybe next year we'll have another set of first year students who'll guide the next batch, inshallah. Okay, so that's the idea behind this. We'll keep it as informal as possible. The ground rules: just mute yourself if you're not speaking. If you have something to say, write it in the chat box or raise your hand. Feel free to chip in. So if somebody is saying something that you think you can add to, or you disagree with, or you need to emphasize more, then feel free to chip in and raise your hand and just speak up. And the same goes for people who are listening and who want information. So try and make as much use of this as possible. So try and ask as many questions as you want. Preferably write them in the chat box, but if you want, you can speak up as well. Just raise your hand and we'll get to you, inshallah. So first of all, we'll start off with introduction. We'll do that for the younger ones, not moms and dads. So we've got a few people. So I'll just go in the order that I can see you on my screen. So we'll start with Hassan Rahij. If you just a short introduction about what if there's something, what you're doing, where you are at the moment, and what your experience has been.
Cool. So Assalamualaikum, my name's Hassan. I'm currently at Imperial College London. I've just finished my 3rd year. Yeah, I don't know what else I want to say.
No, that's fine. That's good. Fine. So are you home? Or are you in London? No.
Yeah, so I'm back home now. I've just literally come yesterday for the summer.
Okay, fine, good. Alina.
Hi, I'm Alina. I'm in year 12 at the moment.
Right. Okay. Fine. So, Alina, what subjects do you have for your A levels?
I have biology, chemistry, and English.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Shami.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Shami. I'm just finished 2nd year of medical school at Bristol. Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. Fine. Saad Abdullah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saad, I go to Bishop Rees Grammar School and I'm in year 11, so I'm not in med school right now.
Okay, fine. But you are hoping to get into med school, is that right?
Inshallah, yes.
Inshallah. Because I think there might be some people here who are not interested in med school, but they're just here to get some general uni application information as well. Okay, Safa.
Hi, I'm Safa. I'm in year 2, so I've just finished year 2, and I'm at Birmingham, and I study medicine as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Good. Right. Thank you. And Sunanya.
Hi, I'm Sania and I just finished year 13 and I firmed Imperial to do medicine.
All right. You're starting in September.
Yeah, in October.
Good. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Right. No, I don't have the. No, if you haven't got your video on, I think it's really helpful if you turn your video on, because some of your names, I don't know if it's a student or a parent there. So, Abdullah.
Assalamu alaikum, Hassan. Sorry. Khalid, I've tried to turn video on, पर कुछ
हो अच्छा एक मिनट मैं ट्राई करके देखता हूँ.
एक मिनट फिर से मैं करती हूँ. Because the host has stopped it. It says.
Sorry, मैंने कुछ करा नहीं वैसे, लेकिन एक मैं फिर से ट्राई करके देखता हूँ आपके लिए.
Okay.
आलिया ये हो सकता है जो आपने ज्वाइन किया हो तो you might have selected,
हाँ, उस time actually laptop का off था, तो I can try go out and then come back in if you want.
Maybe I think that might help. I think that will probably be easier.
I'll do that.
Okay. So where were we? Abdullah.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. I'm Abdullah, and I just finished second year of medicine at the University of Sheffield.
All right. Amina.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm just in year 10, just doing my GCSEs, and I just joined because I want to know what A levels I might want to take in February this year. Because I'm not sure about what I want to do, but this may be an option. So yeah.
Yeah, good. No, you're not just in year 10. I mean, year 10 is a big, big year, right? Amina.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Amna. I'm in year 12. I don't want to do medicine, but I'm just here to get some general advice.
Okay. Thank you, Ari. You're not Arina. You're Amana.
I haven't even done my GCSEs yet. I'm just in year 8. My mum's gone to Sainsbury's, so I just wanted to know about medicine a little bit.
Oh, like you or your mum?
Both of us actually.
That's good. Welcome. I'm sure you'll learn something. Who else? Khalid bhai, I can't see your video. I don't know if is it you or is someone else joining with you?
जी हमारा पर्पस ये है कि हमारा बेटा जीसीएससी में ईयर 9 में है, तो हमने कहा थोड़ा हमें भी प्रोसेस पता जाएगा इन्वेस्टिगेट का और कुछ एक्सपीरियंसेस से हम भी कुछ सीखेंगे.
जरूर इंशाल्लाह. And Hamza
must have joined without video because I think he doesn't have a camera.
Okay, fine. Who we got? Hiba.
Yeah, I'm Hiba. I've just finished my first year at Birmingham Med School.
Okay, right. Thank you. And Amjad bhai, is that Afshin?
Oh yeah, it's Afshin. I just wanted to get some advice, but I'm in year 9 at the moment.
Okay. And Sana.
Hi, I'm Sana. I've just finished my GCSEs.
Okay. And so, are you planning to do medicine, Sana?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. All the best. And Alia, is that Alia? Sorry, I don't know which Alia this is. Any Alia able to?
Hi, Khalid.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Some problem with the computer video on this side. We're using it for the first time. So my camera दूसरा लगा देता हूँ. I don't know what's happened on it. But anyway, Ayman is just coming around. He's done his, he's in his 12th. He's in 6th form. So he's looking to apply for medicine. And I think he's interested. He's just coming back from a volunteering. So we'll take a few minutes.
Okay. Inshallah. Okay, fine. We got one more Alia here. I don't know who that is. Do you want to unmute yourself? Alia with a Y? No? Okay, fine. So what we'll do is we'll start off. I think Abdullah and Shami have made a short presentation just to give us an idea of the timeline that's involved when you apply for med schools. So we'll do that, and then we'll carry on with some more, like a question and answer kind of thing. So are you guys ready with your presentation, Shami?
Yeah, we should be. We didn't realize there'd be so many younger students here, so we'll try and adjust the start of it a bit to kind of back up a bit.
Yeah. Currently the host has disabled attendee screen sharing. So could you
I'll do that.
Make me like moderator or something?
Okay, it should be able to share now.
Okay. Tell me if this works, yeah?
Yeah, we can see.
And do you see the timeline?
Yeah, it's a bit. Is it possible to zoom in to where you're speaking about?
Yeah.
It's a bit.
We'll do for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit more if you can. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to start, Abdullah? Should I?
I don't mind. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum everyone. So we'll just go over the general timeline for applications and specifically medicine, but we'll try to include everything like Shami said earlier. So just starting off year 12, the key thing that you can really do right now, and actually the best time is during the summer holidays after GCSE, that's when I did mine, is to try to get work experience. So for medicine, this can be doing work placements, but it doesn't have to only be work placements in medicine. You can do things around it. So for example, like I did a little bit in clinical research, but I've also heard people do things such as just wherever they can get it really. So for example, if you work at a shop, volunteer at say a charity shop, that can show that you have you talk to customers, so you've developed your communication skills. Because the key thing that unis want to see is what you gained from all these work experiences. And so this definitely also applies to other degrees as well. So as long as you can, so in those degrees, you just try to find the attributes which the unis want from you. And you can find this on the university website and the degree website, because they normally have a section where they talk about what they expect from their prospective students, and just see what work experience you can get that relate to it.
Yeah, so similar thing with me, but the thing with me is I didn't have that much work experience. But the important thing is that you have some, because I quite extrapolated my experiences. So I didn't have that. I only had a couple weeks in a GP and a week at a hospital. But it's about what you can write about it and the things you can learn from it that are really important. So moving on for work experience, one of the main things that sometimes you can forget while you're applying is revision for your actual subjects. So in year 12, I did biology, chemistry, physics, and maths, and I dropped physics. And I was fine in year 12, but once I started applying in year 13, I kind of got a bit laid back. But in year 12, you got to make sure you get the best predicted grades you can. So people take it a bit for granted, saying, "Oh, I can just work hard in year 13 and it'll be fine." You got to make sure you have at least 3 A's predicted from your teachers. So make sure you demonstrate good engagement with every exam, even if you don't have AS level exams like some of us did. It's still really important to make sure you get the best predicted grade. So as I've mentioned in the timeline, you need at least 3 A's, unless you're going for a foundation program, and the higher the 100%, the higher the better.
Does it make any difference what kind of work experience you get? Does, you know, people who have work experience in, say, a medical related field, are they better placed than someone who doesn't?
I think it's important to at least have some type of medical related experience, so even if it's at a care home. But the amount, unless it's a uni that weighs that has a really high minimum amount of work experience, some of them weigh more, like Manchester and other unis. As long as you've got some and you can talk a decent amount about it, it's fine. Otherwise, you can use other non-medical related work experience to demonstrate, to show that you've demonstrated skills that are required as a doctor. So I think there's always a requirement that you have to have some, like even anything, but the amount that you have tends not to be that important as long as you can talk about it.
Right. And you said there's a difference between unis expecting work experience. Is there some way to find out, you know, which university requires what? No, apart from just talking to
we'll
people.
Be covering
like
it.
Okay.
We'll be covering it just a bit later on when we get
sorry.
into that section. No problem. And also just a little bit to add as well is that one thing that might be of interest is that some universities actually take into account this thing called an EPQ. It's an extended personal qualification. And if you have an EPQ, they can sometimes lower the grade requirements. So I think this is worth looking into. Just, you know, you can cover all your bases because you never know what happens on results day.
It counts as about half an A level. So yeah, it's worth looking into for sure. But yeah, Abdullah, continue.
So just before we move on, so I know what an EPQ is because, you know, Amina is in year 12. But for the younger ones and people who've just done their GCSEs or about to do their GCSEs, can you just elaborate on what, no, just an idea of what an EPQ is?
Abdullah, I think you actually did one, so I think it's better that you explain.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so an EPQ is kind of like is essentially like a mini thesis. So it's an essay that you pick the title of, and it's essentially an essay on a title that you pick. So it can be on anything really. So for example, I did mine on the extent to which infectious diseases contribute to poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, and I picked like 3 case studies. But it can be really anything, and ideally you want to actually keep it targeted to something that not only are you interested in, but also relevant to your degree. Because as we'll come on to it a little bit later, but it's something you can really talk about in your personal statement because it's something that you've done yourself and it's unique. So even if you're not doing it, even if you're not doing it just for the grades, it's worth doing it just because it helps you develop not only your interest further, but also develop your knowledge on something. So when it comes to interviews, you can kind of control what they talk about. If you mention it, they'll be like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. And you'll be a better place to talk about that since you've done some research. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks, Abdullah. Thank you.
Okay, so then moving on from year 12, the summer. The summer is key for all medical applicants. And this also applies to dentistry for the UCAT. And this is essentially, so first we'll go over the UCAT. So there's an acronym called PREPARE. And Shami, please take it away.
Yeah, so there's loads of different resources you can use, and it's important to practice quite a lot. I think, so essentially I'm a research student, so I did it twice. And my score was fine both times, but something I think me and Abdullah were both quite guilty of was leaving it kind of late. So I think I only had a couple weeks serious revision, but that isn't to say, oh, you'll be fine if you do that. It's more just people didn't suit it to different things. Like some people were suited to the entrance exam more, some people are suited to being studious to get their grades more. It's important to make sure you've left enough time to prepare for it. So we've mentioned a couple online resources like Medify and UCAT Ninja, and I didn't go to a UCAT crash course because at the time I didn't think I needed it, and because I'd scored fine the first time, I just kind of left it. But if you feel like you're struggling once you start doing it, either contact other students, which is really, really important if you're asking other medical students or other students for help, or go to a crash course. And yeah, just to re-emphasize, you got to make sure you practice quite a lot for everything. But yeah, UCAT is very, very important.
And when are you doing this UCAT? When do you do the UCAT?
You do it between I want to say it's starting late July, and then you can do it all the way up until September. And EPQ is something you do through your school. I think Alia asked that. And yeah, everything Hassan said is definitely true and relevant. And I'm not sure about international baccalaureate, but with us in year 12, I thought they'd have, if you're already in year 12, then your school have told you all about it. But if you're going into year 12, at the start of the year, they'll talk to you about EPQs, and they'll ask you if you want to do it and explain everything about it then, and you'll submit it through your school. So it's a very assisted process.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah, no, sorry, Sammy. So the UCAT is not essential for every medical school application, or only some universities?
So most universities talk about UCAT. So we're going to go into the other entrance exam later, a bit later, because they start a bit later. But yeah, most universities only accept UCAT, but some accept BMAT as well.
Right. Yeah, let's carry on.
Yeah. So like you mentioned earlier, we put some resources. Like personally, I used Medify, and that was quite useful. They give you mock exams, they give you lots of questions, and the key, like Shami said, is to really practice. And just feel free to ask for help from students who've already done it, that you know of, because they can give you really good tips and advice.
Yeah, well, at the end of this, we'll be giving our contact details in case you want to ask, and we'll be able to offer as much advice and tips that you want.
Yeah. So I think you asked earlier about the timeline. I mean, how long you can do the UCAT. So you just apply to do it and you can pick any time in the summer up till, if I remember correctly, like October 15th or something like that. But there's lots of options. So you just search up in your, you just type it online, and you should be able to find where they allow you to book a slot, and you just book it at Pearson's test centers where I did it. So I think this is essentially the equivalent of where you sit your driving license. You'd be doing your UCAT there. So yeah, there's lots of slots. I don't think you should really need to worry about slots running out. You just book it whenever you feel comfortable. So then the next thing that's important to do is to assess the situation. So you need to figure out which university suits you. So there are like three main types of ways universities are structured. So there's the medical degrees are structured. So there's PBL, problem-based learning. So that's more hands-off, and it's more essentially how I'd really try to sum it up is the PBL is minimum teaching and maximum you putting in the effort to learn, and they provide you all the resources to make you really think about it. So if you're the kind of independent learner, PBL may be the best for you, but 100% you just look this up and look at it properly, because it can be quite important. Integrated is a bit of a mix between more standardized learning, where the teachers teach, where there's bulk of lectures, seminars, and things like that, along with a little bit of PBL. And then you have traditional. So the traditional course, which I think only Oxford and Cambridge really do nowadays, is a bit more similar to how our parents did it back in India, which is they solid few years of just theory and then going on into placement. So you'll be mixing in placement. And actually, quite a lot of the courses nowadays are integrated. So it's probably worth looking at the university courses individually to see which one suits you, because that can have an impact on how you learn. So for example, for me personally, Sheffield starts off with, you have like a weekly GP thing. So that was quite nice, but most of the time you spend learning the theory early on. But we'll get into individual universities later on.
Yeah, so my uni does CBL, which is essentially integrated. So CBL and PBL are different because, as Abdullah explained, so mine's half lectures, half cases. And we mentioned that before about the resource you can use to check which unis, prefer different things. So for example, my uni, they didn't weigh, you just have to meet a cutoff for GCSE grades, which is just 8 Bs or something like that. And otherwise it's UCAT and predicted grades, and then obviously interview. So we have a resource which we'll send a link for at some point during this, that basically lists everything. Some of them are a bit less specific, so if you ask us afterwards, we can help you get more specific information. Yeah, so, for sure, yeah. What Hassan says is completely correct. You don't need to do an EPQ at all. I didn't do an EPQ, and all the universities I applied to, I'd have had essentially the same chance of getting into. But for example, a university like Queen Mary, they weigh something called your UCAS points. So you get a certain amount of UCAS points for a grade you achieve at A level, and an EPQ is worth half of an A level of UCAS points, and they weigh that about 50%. So it's definitely worth considering depending on which unis you feel like you want to apply to. But yeah, anything else to add there, Abdullah?
Yeah, like EPQ, from my friends who did it, it was quite useful for people who actually didn't do medicine as well, because that really gives them a talking point on the personal statement. And so, for example, I had a friend who did law, and he covered the case on that Thai diver who saved. This was a big thing a few years ago, and he found that it was really useful when he discussed it in during interviews. So yeah, if you're not doing medicine, that's also something to look into, EPQ, definitely. And also the resource that we'll share with you later, it's the Medical School Council, and we'll put the link in, like Shami said, but it's just generally really good to look at for an overview of everything overall. So then now we move on to the personal statement. So the personal statement is, some people might say it's not that important for medicine, but I mean, personally, I feel like you should do your best in it. However, I've seen people who have not really, who themselves have said they didn't really write a good personal statement, but they got into places like Cambridge. So the personal statement isn't everything. So you shouldn't worry about it too much, but also keep in mind that this is basically the only personalized thing the medical school will see from you. So this is where you show your originality, I guess. So there's some, if you can see the timeline, there's some brief things that we feel are important that you put in a personal statement. So there isn't one right way to do things. However, generally, it's quite useful to focus on the attributes that most medical schools will talk about that make a good doctor, like teamwork, and then show where you've demonstrated it. And then essentially keep it 2 minutes. I'm sure quite a lot of us have probably done a bunch of things, and you don't need to mention everything you've done, but the things you do mention, you need to explore it in detail, because they want to see how much you've learned from the specific experience, which links into what Shami said earlier, in that you don't need to do that much, but what you do, you need to show that you've learned from it, because the key thing medical schools want to see is what you've gained from your work experiences. And the personal statement is where you demonstrate this. Because at the end of the day, the medical schools want to have potential doctors who understand what they're getting into. And this personal statement, you want to show that you understand that this is not going to be easy, and that you have an idea of what you're getting into. Because I'm not sure if you've done other things before like this, but like one thing quite a lot of the interview prep people say is that the worst thing possible in a personal statement is to say something like, since you're a fetus, you're born to be a doctor. You know, that's like one of the worst things you can possibly say, that you've always wanted to be a doctor, because interviews it's quite cliche. And so that's something to keep in mind about what, yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so the zoom in, zoom out thing we mentioned is something that also happens at interviews. So if they ask you a question, or if you have a skill you want to talk about, you zoom into your experience, a specific part of it that taught you that thing. So again, we can also provide, you can have a look at our personal statements, not to copy from obviously, but just to have a look at the way we structured ours. And talking about asking for help, like I mentioned before, students, professionals will all be very willing to help you to go over your personal statements, point out where they think you've gone wrong, or point out what's really good about it, and help you shape it into the best it can possibly be. Because as we said, even though there are some people that got in, you know, with not great personal statements, it's best that you do the best that you can in it, because if you submit it and then hypothetically you might get rejected from a uni you wanted to go to, you might be thinking, oh, maybe it was about a bad personal statement. So just do your best. And something I really want to stress on is, unless your school's known for giving good medical student advice, like maybe from current medical students that used to go to your school, don't ask them for medical help, because mine of the last school, especially mine, they don't know anything about the process. It's only students or professionals that really know the process. Like after my GCSEs, they weren't like bad or anything, but they weren't like what you'd think of a typical medical student. And I went to my careers advisor and they told me, you'll never do medicine. And then I ended up getting 7 offers in 2 years. So trust me when I say anyone can do it. And unless you've dramatically failed where you just wouldn't expect, you always have a chance to go into medicine if you've made the right decisions, like for example, subjects and whatnot. So if your school says something about you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that, take it with a pinch of salt and ask someone who knows what they're talking about, because trust me, I was very disheartened for a long time, and it can really affect your application if you've been given the wrong information. But yeah, that's essentially what it is for personal statement. So moving on to BMAT. So once year 13 starts, there are 2 different dates you get for BMAT. So one of them's at September and one of them's in November. So the thing with the BMAT is, unless you do the earlier date, you won't find out what result you got until after you've applied, because the deadline is in, I think, October for medical students. So you've got you don't have to have done it at the earlier date. I didn't, but that it's important to kind of weigh which ones, how many universities you apply to that have BMAT, because especially if you're doing the November date, if you do pick 3 of your 4 unis as BMAT options, it's probably not too wise, just in case it doesn't go as well as you might expect. So some of the top universities do BMAT though. So Oxbridge, Imperial, UCL, and some other ones like Leeds, they all do BMAT. So it's definitely worth considering, especially if you want to apply to those unis. And again, we've mentioned a couple resources that we use. So when I did my BMAT the first time I applied, I used BMAT Ninja, and I also went to a crash course, because but it did really help. So I think in terms of crash courses, it's more worth, if you're going to pick one, it's more worth doing it for BMAT than UKCAT, because I think it's not necessarily more difficult, but the advice that you can get from a crash course and the practice you can get from a crash course is more useful than you can get for UKCAT or for UCAT. So that's worth keeping in mind.
So just one thing. So if your uni doesn't require BMAT and you still do it, does that give you any extra weightage? Or?
No, not at all. It's just the same as if you apply to a BMAT uni and you've done UCAT. The UCAT only applies to those unis, and the BMAT only applies to the unis that accept it. No, it doesn't help. But yeah, Abdullah, you can.
Yeah, I did my BMAT early in September, and I felt like that was quite useful because it let me make a bit more informed decision. However, that does give you less time to practice. So for example, I only had like a 2-week gap in between my UCAT and BMAT. And I mean, in hindsight, that was a bad decision, because because the BMAT is different from the UCAT, and the half of it is kind of sciencey, and the other half I think was an essay, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you probably want to give a bit more time to revise and practice for these kind of things. It's quite important to get the practice in. So yeah, beyond that, the BMAT, UCAT, you can do either or. I did both. Yeah. And I think all of this kind of leads up to finally your UCAS application. Oh, how do you approach? Okay. So I'll just answer Alina's question. This was during the summer, because I did it during September. And so I did not have to worry about schoolwork or assessments beyond the BMAT, which is why I thought I'd get it out of the way beforehand, because I was worried about the mock exams, because our mock exams were in like November, December, which is going to be around BMAT time, which is why I wanted to get out of the way earlier. And so I didn't have to worry about that bit. And the short space of time, I just kind of sat down, spammed the BMAT Ninja, and I had gone to a course earlier in the year that was for UCAT and BMAT as well. So I already did the crash course for that. And they gave like a cute little booklet that had like nice advice in it. I might still have it somewhere actually, so I can share it with you guys if you.
Sorry, Abdullah, I'm assuming this was pre-COVID, your BMAT and UCAT.
Yes.
Yeah. So are they still doing these courses now, or how are they doing this?
I would imagine it. Yeah, I would assume it'd be online.
Well,
probably.
I think they can also organize socially distanced small number of people ones. I'll check the resource afterwards, and I can share it with whoever can get the information to you guys.
The current year 12s, have any of you tried to find out where if someone's doing this, or can you tell the rest if you know anything about this?
Yeah, I think when I was doing some research, Medic Mentor have some good courses. A lot of the online courses, though, you have to pay for, and a few are free, but they're really hard to get into. You have to apply really early. And at the moment, I don't think they're open for application, the free courses. But I think you mentioned it in this flowchart. Medify, I've heard of, is quite a good resource.
Okay, when you say early, when's early?
The application deadline, I think, for some of the summer courses was in January or February of this year.
Okay. Yeah, something for the current GCSE.
Yeah.
Next year ones, yeah. Okay.
A crash course isn't like required or anything. Again, for example, Medify. I use Medify for UKCAT, and I use BMAT Ninja for BMAT. When I did it the first time. So yeah, you don't need to go to crash courses, especially because some of them are actually quite expensive. I had to do some hard convincing to my dad to let me go to my BMAT one, but now for sure they're still very useful. So if you do decide to do it, then I don't think it's something you'll end up regretting. But yeah, don't worry if you can't go do a BMAT crash course or a UKCAT one, especially because it's not necessity. It's just something that's there to help you kind of.
Yeah. I think we'll let you finish your presentation quickly, and then I think Safa and Hassan have got some things to say. We'll just go.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let's try and hurry up. Go on. I think Abdullah, you can continue from there if you want for a little.
Yeah. I'll just finish off the answering the question. So for revision, GCSE guides, the GCSE science guides for the science part of the BMAT, and for the other half, I think I just use the BMAT Ninja website for practice. And essays, you just try practicing some essays. They'll tell you on the website the format of how the questions work. So just practice writing some. And so yeah, finally, after you submit the UCAS, you end up with interviews. So overall, I'll just say that they can be fun, but obviously, they can be stressful as well. So we don't blame you. So don't think too much about it for now. Right now, I mean, depending on right now, all you need to focus on is the UCAT BMAT because they matter the most right now for you, because they're what gets you in. And your local area and your school might already have like mock interview sessions. So you should try trying to find out about that. Like our local hospital organized one for medical students here. So that's definitely something worth looking into. And there are interview crash courses as well that you can probably try. And you can just practice at home, practice in front of the mirror, because you can see questions. So for example, specifics about universities, like my university, Sheffield, they actually give you the questions beforehand. So that can be quite useful for you if you're worried about, if you stress about those kind of things. And yeah, these would occur like late 2021. So after your applications, that few months after that, and can even go up to like January, February, March. So don't be too worried if you don't get your interviews out of the way in like November, December time. Although Oxbridge do it during November, December time.
All right, thank you guys. So you were saying something, Shami?
I was just going to mention that I've actually forgotten. Oh yeah, just remember that you have to revise, because if you've got a BMAT early, that's fine. But in terms of interviews, obviously do your prep for it. But something I made a mistake of that I mentioned, I didn't revise properly in my first year and I flopped my grades. So make sure that you keep your mind in your studies as well, because an offer is useless without you getting the grades. And yeah, we'll give contact details if for any questions about having a mock interview or whatever you want.
Right. No, thank you. I think that's really useful. I mean, I certainly learned a lot. I think it's useful. So we'll just got a few comments, and then we'll let Safa and Hassan wanted to say something there. So Safa first. I think you said something about the deadlines for personal statements being earlier.
Yeah, I was just saying that the deadline for personal statements for medicine and dentistry is like normally October the 15th, and so but for other courses it's like normally in January or something. So like kind of what Shami was saying, like schools and stuff, they don't really like realize the importance of like, sometimes they don't really realize the importance of like medical school applications and stuff. So it might tell you like, oh, like start your personal statement in like September or something. But obviously that's going to just put stress on yourself because you've got year 13 content in September as well. So I'd really suggest like starting your personal statement kind of like after your UKCAT, before you start school kind of time. And the personal statement, it's kind of like a work in progress. I don't think it's something you need to kind of do like the night before. I suggest like kind of like, for me personally, it took me like 5 to 6 drafts, and then like I showed like around 3 people. I also think it's important to kind of not show too many people, because then you get too much feedback and it can be quite overwhelming, and then it can kind of conflict. So kind of show like maybe 3 people. I think that's enough to get a good kind of opinion about like personal statement in general. And just about, yeah, I think that was it about personal statements I wanted to say.
I think you said something about ethics being an important part of the interview process.
Yeah. So I was saying that like at like this is like an interview stage, they love to like talk about ethics. Even like during medical school, like we have like 4 modules just like for ethics. Ethics is like a big part in medicine. It's going to come out throughout, and I think if you've got like your EPQ on ethics, I think that's going to like make you stand out, and it's going to make you like, it's a really good topic to talk about. And just, yeah, like this is like this is like interview preparation, but like ethics, so like there's 4 pillars in medicine that you'll need to know about, which you can obviously find out about, and there's like a lot of ethical scenarios that come up. And yeah, and so related to ethics, if you can kind of like show in your personal statement, obviously you're not that you're ethical, obviously you're going to be ethical, but like if you can show that you're like compassionate, you can kind of display empathy, things like this. So that can be like Shami said, like in a care home. It could even be something like caring for like, I don't know, like your neighbor's dog or something. It could even be something like I don't know, helping your friends because they, I don't know, their parents had like an accident or something. Like it could even be like a personal experience. It doesn't have to be like a work experience tick box exercise. So literally anything you've gone through, you can use that. And I think the more unique it is, the more you're going to stand out, really, because everyone has the hospital, like, you know, the tick list. So yeah.
Thanks Safa, thanks a lot for that. So Hassan, you said something about work experience and EPQs. Anything to add to what Hassan, Abdullah and Shami said?
So I mean, about the work experiences, I mean, Safa's basically just said most of it there. It's more important like the quality of work experience you do and what you can talk about it, rather than like the frequency or the quality of like the hospital you do it in, for example. So like if you just kind of even did a very simple one, just like a day at a GP, if you can in your personal statement or in your interview just flesh that out, that I learned this skill and this skill and this skill, that's all they care about. As long as you can kind of talk or even blag about it and just flesh it out, that's what the universities care about. It doesn't matter if you do 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 months or something, as long as you have something done. Personal statements is a weird one because as I think Shami was saying, like it's very easy to sound cliche because I mean there's thousands and thousands of applicants, a lot of whom are going to be putting very similar things to you. So it's quite hard to stand out, especially as a medical student. Like there's some things you kind of have to include. So although it's a personal statement, you're still kind of writing quite a similar thing, which goes on to the point about, well, how important is it if everyone's quite similar? But yeah, that's where all the other things come in. And I think Safa was mentioning as well, like the start of year 13 like is tough. Apart from the exams at the end, I'd say the start of year 13 is the hardest time because you've just finished your UCAT, you're trying to get your personal statement finished, you've probably got the BMAT around the corner. So like, yeah, I'd say at that point, you kind of need to be ready for the step up from year 12 to year 13 and be properly prepared. I think like the biggest tip I would say for all of it, and I think the flowchart is very useful for this, there's a lot of information on that flowchart and it's very easy to get lost in it. But it's just kind of like take a step back and see, where am I on that flowchart? Am I currently in year 11? Am I in year 12? Am I in year 13? Am I at the BMAT stage or UCAT stage? And when you're at a certain stage, like you should be aware of everything else that's going to happen in the future, but don't worry about it. So if you're in the process of doing work experience, for example, have in your head that at some point I'm going to be doing the UCAT, but don't be stressing about that. Same thing if you're in the summer writing your personal statement, doing your BMAT, have in your head that in the future I might get an interview and I'll worry about that then, but don't stress about that then. Focus on what you have to do right now.
Right. No, that's really helpful. I think so. The key message is to focus at what's on hand and be aware of.
But be aware that you will have to do these things, and some things like work experience, like you have to plan ahead for that. But yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks. I think that's a really useful message. We've talked about interviews and what the timeline is and what part's stressful. So I think we've got Sonania who's just done. I think she's the one who's just done all of this, and then Hiba is, I think, the most recent one apart from Sonania. So we'll just go to, I think, Sonania first. So how does this bring back memories, nightmares?
Pretty much, yeah. I would say, so I did like the UCAT and the BMAT, and I would say for UCAT I used Medify, and I would definitely recommend that. Like, it is expensive, but it's definitely worth it. And BMAT, I did BMAT Ninja as well. And I think it's good because for BMAT for us, I did it in November time because some unis don't actually use the September one. I'm not sure which ones, but there is a few universities that don't actually look at the September one. So I had mocks in September as well. So I only had maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But I would definitely recommend just getting all of your old GCSE science notes out and maths notes. And they've got like a list of topics you have to know, and just going through those and seeing what you already know and what you need to go over again. And then I guess for interviews, actually a lot of people here are quite young. So I would say that it's good to go through the main skills you would need to have. So things like teamwork, leadership, empathy, and try and find things you can do or things you've done that show those. So things like, say, Duke of Edinburgh is really good for teamwork and patience and things like that. And what else? I volunteered at a hospice, and I'm not sure if you'd be able to do that now because of COVID, but it's just things like that you can say that you've done this to show those key skills, because you can write about that in your personal statement and mention it. So you mention all these different things so that, yeah, at interviews they can go into more detail and you can like really show off, basically.
Right. No, thank you. Thanks for that. So I think what's going to be different for the current year 11s and 12s is COVID and the lack of opportunities to do some of the things that I think the older peers have done. Like work experience is almost non-existent now. So I think, do you think it'll be enough to rely on like personal experiences for personal statements? Or I mean, what else can they do? What they can't get work experience now. Any ideas from anyone?
There's a lot. Oh, sorry. There's because obviously a lot of my work experience was cancelled as well this year, but there was a lot of online courses as well. Like there's one for Brighton and Sussex, and it isn't the same as doing an actual placement in a hospital or a GP surgery, but it shows that you're committed and that you are really interested. So doing, say, future learn courses in a particular area that you're interested in, or like this Brighton and Sussex online work experience, that can really show off as well.
Right. Okay. And so what we'll do is, I think if you could just mention this in the chat box as well, Sonania, the courses that you're aware of, and I don't know if it'll help. We'll discuss this later, but I think we might make like a WhatsApp group with everyone here, just so you can share resources later on. So Safa and Shami wanted to say something as well. Safa first.
Yeah, I think she said. So I was just going to say something called like MOOCs. I don't know if it's the future learn courses, so you could do those. Those are like things you can. It's like a specific topic. It's obviously not work experience, but it's like. So I know someone so one of my friends, he did work experience, and then he like amplified it by like looking up a MOOC on like how to differentiate between like X-rays and CTs or something. So like you can do a MOOC on literally anything. It could be like, I don't know, something like why is, I don't know, insomnia so prevalent in teenagers, like literally anything that interests you. It's not an EPQ obviously, but it just shows that you're interested and you've done some more like in-depth research, which is something you can talk about in your personal statement. And like Sunaina said, that you can do like the online, I think there's other hospitals and stuff who do it. If I can find some, I'll like send it in the resources and stuff.
Yeah, sure, thanks. And so Hiba, we haven't heard from yet.
Yeah, just to add to that, universities do kind of understand if you can't find a work experience and stuff, and they're usually very open about what their requirements are. So you can actually look up for individual universities. You can usually find on their websites exactly what their work experience requirements are, and it's very extensive. You can find like how they will classify you for interviews based on like grades or whatever else. So if you kind of have an idea of what universities you might be interested in, like you can get kind of an overall picture of what you need to do by looking on their websites. And yeah, they're not horrible. So a lot of them have relaxed requirements and just said, you know, as long as you can demonstrate reflection and all of that, then they'll be happy with that.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Hiba. I think that's come through another statement in the comments on the chat box as well. Somebody else mentioned, you know, EPQ. I can't remember who it was, but so EPQs, you really need to reflect on what you've done. I think that's what we do as doctors, and obviously I think they're expecting the same as, you know, medical students and applicants. So I think you need to reflect on how your work experience has mattered and how it's impacted on you. I think so. I think reflection and just write down what you're doing when you're doing it. Okay, so I think anything else anyone
Khalid,
else
can I
wants
add
to add?
something?
Yeah, sure.
Khalid,
JB,
can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Now, for the new for the people who are planning to go to universities now, I think in the personal statements they can put things about COVID-19 and how they cope with it, how they help their neighbors, how they help people around them. That would be a very good thing on their personal statements. The second thing I will say is my hospital has started taking in school students for their for a week. They are not taking them in big numbers, like 3 or 4 students per department, but they started doing it for single person at one time. So that is something that you have to explore locally. I'm sure all the hospitals have started doing it in some measure. So that is something you can think of. You can think about working in a pharmacy. That is also very useful because that is also a part of the hospital. It is patient facing, okay, people facing. Now, I wanted to tell something as a parent, okay. The students, they have 4 choices. Well, I never studied in this country, but I can understand that it is an issue because the first thing they think about is Oxford and Cambridge. Now, everybody will not get in there. That is one thing which everybody has to be very sure of. My children are after my life because I tell them that. Okay, so the moment you apply to one of those, you have lost 25% of your choices. So you are left with 3 choices now, okay, where you are going to apply. Now, if you apply to the 3 top universities for that particular thing, well, you have to do the top 10. Now, the important thing for the students as well as the parents is to make sure that they can look for what choice they want and apply, definitely there. But there should be a backup also, which is usually not so high in the ranking and things like that. People apply there. And if you don't go for that, so-called backup or fall back upon university, it will be an issue. And here the parents need to guide their children because many a times, because they're enthusiastic, young, and full of vigor, they want to apply for all the top things everywhere. But you have to be pragmatic and practical about it. And that is something that parents have to guide them for. That is what I want to say. Now, one of the medical schools which is new, very new, is at Lincoln. Now, right now, they are a part of Nottingham Medical School. So this is a backdoor to get into Nottingham. Okay, so this is something that the parents whose children go to apply this year should look at. This is what I wanted to add there.
All right, thank you,
I hope that helps.
I think very useful. नहीं हम लोग को ऑक्सफोर्ड कैम्ब्रिज के अलावा कुछ मतलब बाकी तो सब वो लगता है हम लोग का इंडियन माइंडसेट जो है आई थिंक एवरीथिंग एल्स इज लाइक होता है लेकिन आई थिंक there's some comments about work experience. Alia आपा ने कहा I think that you can volunteer at COVID vaccination center, and Hassan has said that I think there are vaccination centers that are taking on volunteers, so something worth exploring in your local areas as well. And Abdullah says if seats, I think 5 options, so there are the 5 options for universities, and 4 have to be, so 4 can be medicine and 1 has to be a non-medical thing. And that non-medical degree can be anything, or just have to, okay, fine. But the 4, okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, I was going to ask if the 4 have to be medicine, but yeah, obviously, if you apply to medicine, you improve your chances. Okay. Anything anyone else wants to add to the work experience, or has anyone tried to get any work experience recently? Any of the younger, the year 11s, 12s? Let's see. Alina, and who else?
Yeah, I just did the Brighton and Sussex work experience, which was like an online virtual thing. It was really, really useful. So they did 1 session every month, which went on for like 6 hours in 1 day. And it was like, it was quite long, but it was still really useful because they had sort of interview or discussion sessions with the doctors who were running the course. And you also got to look in different areas of specialty. And it ran for 6 months. So every month you'd have 1 session on a different area of medicine.
That's good. That's good. One thing I wanted to ask, I think Hiba might be the best person for this. So Hiba and maybe Sunanya. So I was speaking to Habibai. Habibai said, no, Boston, like Shami and Abdullah. I think you're quite lucky to be in Boston, where they already start doing mock interviews and mock sessions quite early on, soon after your GCSEs, I think. I don't know if other places do that or not, but so Hiba and Sunanya, what did you do for your say mock interviews, or did you practice anything locally? Hiba?
Yeah, so my school did mock interviews, which not all schools do, but I think because there were a few of us who were planning to apply for medicine, so we kind of got together and asked the school if they would arrange something. So that's an option. If there's like a few people in your school, then you can kind of form like a little club or society amongst you, and then you can ask the school for help, and that's usually more effective. And also it's a good thing to put on your personal statement. You can put that on there. So it's kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. I did also go to like an interview, like a mock interview crash course type thing, which I personally found quite helpful. But yeah, again, you do have to pay for them and they can be expensive. So I'd say like, yeah, weigh it up first and see if you can get, because there are a lot of, you know, doctors or medical staff who will be willing to help you without paying. So I'd say only do that if you don't feel confident.
Right. Okay. And Sunanya, any different experiences?
I did 1 mock interview in school. They organized 1 interview. That was like the only official one I had. And apart from that, we made like a med soc in our year, which actually I'd recommend doing if your school doesn't have one, because it also looks good in interviews. And we just did like MMI practice. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but MMI is like multiple mini interviews, and it's just one of the types of interviews you can get. So we just practiced that together, and there's some online free resources as well, and I'll look for them and put them on the WhatsApp group.
Right. Yeah.
They were really good as well.
Fine. And so Hiba and Sunan, so you did your mock interviews, and the rest as well. Whoever's done mock interviews recently, are they very similar to your actual interviews? Do they help you? Do they actually help you, prepare for the real thing, or are they, not as, not exactly the same as your real ones?
I do think that if you're not used to kind of, because at MMIs, which are kind of the most common type of interviews, you have like little stations and you sit with one person and discuss one subject with them. So it's kind of very different from anything you would do in everyday life. So I think to kind of get into the habit of like answering questions on the spot that you haven't necessarily prepared for, yeah, it kind of feels unnatural if you haven't practiced. So in that sense, it's really useful.
Are these questions about your subjects or just general?
Generally, they don't tend to be scientific type questions. There might be a few, but I think they more want to get an idea of your personality and like kind of you're not a robot, you're like someone who can empathize with people, someone who will work hard, stuff like that. They can't judge from, grades and admissions tests.
Right, okay. I think most of you have Aligarh genes in you, so I think you should be able to cope with, spontaneity and things like that. Okay. Right. So anything anyone else wants to add to the process or how to prepare for it? Otherwise, I think we'll open this up for questions. Maybe, if
I had one thing I was thinking that could be quite useful is, I guess at the moment, because of COVID, it's probably not the best idea, but maybe when things relax, what could be quite useful is actually working with the local hospital. So for how in Boston, not only there are schools do it, but I think some Shami can correct me on this, but a few years ago, one of the medical students came together and worked with like doctors in the hospital to actually make a reoccurring thing. And so the benefit of that, since it is hospital based, they could actually take in students that were not only in their school. So we had exposure to all of our local area schools and all students who want to become doctors. And because of that, that gave us more variety. And also it made it more stable as well, because, and also gave you another place to do things. So if you, for example, I imagine quite a lot of our parents are probably doctors. So you can work with them to try to work something out at the local hospital.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So any more questions about? So there's a question from Amina. Any universities that accept med school applicants without biochem? I'm assuming that's biology and chemistry.
The one that's actually the most important is chemistry. So Bristol, they accept you with just chemistry, but yeah, you don't need to have biology. But pretty much most, like 90% of unis, you'll need both for. I'm sure there are other ones that aren't Bristol. Again, with the link that Abdullah sent, and we will send again. It lists all the universities mentioned what they want and what they don't want. But I don't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any outside of Bristol that don't need biology. But generally, yes.
I was just going to say that one thing that's quite interesting is if you look at the link, there's actually an alternative pathway, because there are multiple pathways to actually get into medicine. So doing your 2 or 3 sciences isn't the only way. So one way is actually to not do any sciences, and you can look at that on the link we sent you. So for the person who says no bio and chem, if you don't have any sciences or something like that, that might be worth looking at, because it's quite interesting.
So if you have sciences and you don't have biology or chemistry, is it still possible or no?
Then what Shami said applies, I'd imagine.
Sorry, Hassan.
Yeah, chemistry is a must at like basically every single university, I'm pretty sure. I do have a friend in like Oxford, I think, who did chemistry and physics. But like I'd say 99% of people have biology. And even if you don't do biology, if you get into first year and you haven't done A-level biology, like you would kind of be very lost. I think everyone would agree with that. So yeah, even if like you don't like biology, I mean, first question, why if you still want to do medicine, but like have it, I'd say, because it helps when you're at uni as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I guess too late for Amna. Amna is my daughter, by the way, and she's I think she's got she hasn't got either biology or chemistry. She's not interested in medicine, but I think you've inspired her to ask the question. I think. So what I've done now is I've just created a WhatsApp group. I'll send the links in the chat box. If you're on your phone or if you've got WhatsApp on your laptop, just use this link to join in. If not, then I'll post it on our group as well. So one of your parents will forward it to you. So just I think it'll be useful for everyone to join that group and just share whatever you've got on that group. There's something about UCAT in the chat box. Any questions from any of the,
Yeah, I'd like to ask something, Khalid. Picking up from Habib Bhai's advice. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Habib Bhai, I completely agree with you. You lose whatever 25 to 30%, your seat chances if you're applying for Oxbridge. But I think Alina would like to keep one of them as an aspirational still. So we have had that conversation within our family, and she's bent upon applying for Cambridge. We don't know if there's anyone here who is from Cambridge or Oxford. No?
I think Hassan's in Imperial. I think that's equally hard to get into.
Yeah. So what was the range of grades people got offers at if they did really well on the interview and a good BMAT score, if they didn't actually get their, what their predicted grades were? Is there a chance of getting the final placements at all or not? If you don't get...
answer that. So I'm at Imperial. I did apply to Cambridge, but didn't get in. So I mean, it's a mix really. So for Oxbridge and Imperial and UCO, I think as well, the requirement is A star AA.
Yeah.
And if you were not, so that's what your predicted grades would need to be. If you were to miss that, I think I don't know of any instances where they do let you in for those 3 unis. There might be exceptions if you have a really high BMAT or really good interview or something. But normally, like if you don't get your predicted grades, that's kind of it for you, although there are some exceptions. In terms of BMAT score I mean, different unis do it differently. Some kind of just put all the names on a spreadsheet. They'll say, right, anyone below this number, we're going to cut off and we'll only look at those above. Some kind of look at it holistically. So they'll add your BMAT score to your interview score, to your personal statement. So it's quite hard to comment what BMAT score kind of gets you in, changes year upon year. But yeah, just a case of do as well as you can.
Thank you for that. In that process, the whole process involves, you apply and then you get 4 offers. Say, for example, you get all 4 offers from all the 4 universities you applied for, and then you get interviewed, and then you get your, conditional offers. So you accept 2 of them, and then you do your exams, and A-level results then decide whether you get confirmation for those 2 places that you finally chose. Now, if you do get, the final offer from your, post your results, A-level results, are you allowed to pick your second choice out of those 2 as your first then, if you've changed your mind? Say, for example, if she's bent upon, applying for Cambridge and she puts Cambridge as her top choice in the final acceptance, and then, she gets final offers for both, and she chooses the second option and not the first, can she do that? Or would she have to waste a year because she didn't get the grades for Cambridge, and then the second choice would not be given a weightage? She won't be allowed to pick that up as her first. Is that something that happens?
So sorry, just like in a hypothetical scenario, so she's applied to Cambridge and Leeds, let's say, and she's firmed Cambridge, but Leeds is a second.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to say in terms of grades? So she's not got the grades for Cambridge?
Yeah.
If she's not if she's not got the grades for Cambridge, but she's still got the grades for Leeds, then
Yeah.
Leeds would then become automatically the first option, and she would go to Leeds.
Okay.
If she got the grades for neither, you'd go to neither. If you got it for both, you'd go to Cambridge.
So if you get both, are you still allowed to pick your second option?
If you get both, I don't think it's a case of pick. It's a case, it's your first choice is called your firm, and your second choice is called your insurance. So if you were to get both, you go to your firm. I don't think it's a case of picking either or.
Right. Okay.
These allow you to call them up on
Can I
results.
just interject here? You can usually, if you decide you don't want to go to your first choice, you can, call them up or something and ask them to release you from that, which they usually will do. They don't hold you hostage against your will. And then you could theoretically get into your second choice. But I don't know anyone who's done that because it's not a guaranteed route.
Right. Yeah. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Is if you're on the day before telling, for example, Cambridge to release you, you call up the other uni and ask, is it possible? These are my grades, this is my situation. Is it okay if I switch to you as my insurance and now as my firm? And you get the response first before releasing yourself, because obviously it's best to go to Cambridge than to nowhere. Let's just say if you don't want to go to Cambridge. So yeah.
Cambridge than nowhere is definitely a good choice, I think.
It's not a situation I'd find myself in, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, just one more thing. No, one thing that obviously we haven't gone through the process myself, so I don't just make sense to me is when you don't have predicted scores, but you get your final scores are actually good enough to get into the course you want to, and then you apply after your, I don't know what it's called, but can someone elaborate on that?
Okay, so I mean, that's if you want to speak, but basically sometimes you're actually sometimes more likely to get an offer if you've already got your grade. So let's say you have 3 A's or however many or whatever grades it is, and then you take a gap year to reapply, then that way the uni knows this person's already got their grades. So sometimes that actually counts for you rather than against you. So some people think that taking a gap year is a really bad thing and it's embarrassing and whatnot. But if you're taking it to apply again, you've already got the grades. First of all, you can completely focus on your interviews and your entrance exams, which is another huge bonus. And unis will, the majority of the time, or at least a lot of the time, will look at it as a good thing that you've already got your grades and now you're applying. So that's essentially that process.
Right. Okay. No, but that's what you're talking about is the gap year. What my question was about, if you haven't got, so I think I'm assuming the conditional offers are made on the basis of predicted scores, but if you haven't got good predicted scores, but you actually get really good, you get, really good actual real A-level scores. What happens?
Yeah, so there's a thing. Oh, do you want to speak on?
Abdullah,
I don't mind.
Hassan, go on.
Okay, so there's a thing called clearing, which is kind of more popular or kind of likely for you to get in for other courses. It's rare for medicine, but yeah, let's say you get predicted quite badly or you just miss your offer for Cambridge and Leeds by an A or something, but you've still got A star B, for example, you've got very good grades. There's a thing called clearing, so it's on results day and a few days after that. There might be some medical universities which are still looking to fill their places, like they've not offered enough offers, or too many people have missed out on their offers, so they still have places up for grabs. I know St. George's in London does that. I don't know if any of the others do, but they do that sometimes. So it's a rare scenario, definitely not something you should rely on or be looking to kind of like lean towards, but it is possible for that to happen.
Okay, I've got something to add on this. So the thing is, if you have better grades on the day, it's actually quite a lot of universities actually do it, but it's not official, which is why it's not that well known that this is a thing. So what you have to do is actually call up the universities or email them. But generally, quite a lot of universities, like for example, if I remember correctly, like good universities also do it. It's not just, like red brick universities do it as well. So you shouldn't feel like as if you have to take a year out, for example, since it seems like a bit of a concern might be taking a gap year, although that should not really be, which it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But on results day, just calling up universities and just seeing is is definitely something you should do. And if you have interviews already, but you'd not make the cut for the interviews, you should call those universities first, because they prioritize, or email them, because they prioritize people who've done interviews over people who haven't, because they'll have to call in people to do interviews later on. And so the universities find it more convenient to just pick people who did not make the cut originally.
Okay, so you've had an interview with, say, for example, Leeds, and they didn't offer you a place, and then you got better grades than you were predicted. So you can still call them up and ask them if they'll take you. So, but can you call up any university, even if
anything at all? Like you can call up any university, and in fact, say for example, you don't want to do medicine anymore, but you've applied, but then you suddenly really have a change of heart. You can call up the universities, any university, and just ask them, because it's not because it's actually easier than you might expect. You can just call them up and ask them, and they might have a place, they might not, because at the end of the day, you're just calling, you're not committing to anything at that point.
You mean for another course apart from medicine?
Any course. No, medicine as well. Call them up definitely for medicine. I know other courses you can do it officially, but medicine you can do it unofficially. But yeah, just call up. It's fine.
Right.
Any university at all, call it them. Although if I remember correctly, Oxbridge and I think Imperial and UCL don't normally have clearing spaces. Although if you've done an interview from them, it's probably worth emailing them. Like I'd recommend emailing them as well as calling, because with an email they can actually get back to you, since you can give them details and things like that, which is more convenient than on phone.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And Saad Abdullah wants to know how relevant your GCSE scores are for Oxbridge, Imperial, or for any other university. I'd add to that question. I think we've got a few, pre-GCSE, around GCSE people here. So does anyone want to take that question?
I'll go for it. For example, okay, so Oxbridge and UCL, they weigh your GCSEs. Oxbridge especially, I think, and UCL do to an extent. Imperial actually just have a cutoff. So if you have, correct me if I'm wrong, Hassan, I think it's like 7 A-star to C's or something, and then a certain amount of A's in 3 subjects, then you meet the cutoff and they don't weigh it. So a lot of unis just have a cutoff, which tends to be reasonably easy to achieve. And then after that, they don't weigh them at all. So Imperial is one of those unis. Bristol's one of those unis. Plymouth's one of those unis. There's again, Abdullah has that sheet, that link to that resource that shows you all of those things. But a fair few of the top ones do weigh them, and Nottingham does too. But for example, Imperial and King's and Bristol, like still really good unis, they all you just meet the cutoff, and then after that they don't weigh GCSEs. So it depends on which uni you apply to. But yeah, that's just some of the examples I can think of.
Right.
Can I add something to? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Birmingham weighs GCSEs. I think when I was applying, it was 70-30, 70% GCSEs, 30% UK CAT. I think now they've made it 50-50 or 60-40. So Birmingham's one that does weigh. So if you've got a good GCSEs, basically, Birmingham might be a good option for you. Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
How do you know these? I mean, obviously you go to Birmingham, but say I wanted to get an idea of which universities weigh your GCSEs, and where do I get this information from?
So like the website that they've sent, that has everything. And also like if you go on like the individual websites, they have like the individual requirements. That might be a bit tedious, whereas that the website they've sent kind of would have a comparison table. So it would probably just have all the unis on the side, the UK CAT requirement, the BMAT requirement if it's relevant, the GCSE, the A-level requirement. Some obviously, so like Birmingham, it does say like, I think So at the time I applied, they had a scoring system for your GCSE. So if you had an A star or a 9, you'd get a certain point. If you had an A, you'd get a certain point, and so on. Some kind of just say, like Shami said, like they just need a cut off. So as long as you've like got the cut off, they don't look at it anymore. It just depends on the youth. So like I know I applied to Manchester as well. Manchester doesn't really look at, Manchester has a cut off as well. Manchester focuses more on the UK CAT. So again, like when it comes to unis, obviously it's great to like think, oh, I want to apply to this uni, I want to apply to this uni. Obviously when you're young you can have all these aspirations, but when you kind of get into year 12 and you do your UK CAT and BMAT, it automatically sometimes it limits your options due to whatever reason. So you've got to always look at applying to your strengths. Obviously apply to one aspirational, which is great, but you need to apply to your strengths. So there's no point applying to like GCSE heavy unis if you've not really got like really high GCSEs. So that's really like key, applying to your strengths, because I think that makes or breaks a lot of people's applications.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Safa. Habib bhai,
No, that is what I was trying to, that is what I was trying to say, what Safa just now said. Plus, on top of that, if there are two students with the same number of points, and if they're very similar all the way through, then it boils down to the GCSE grades, which decides which students gets in. So GCSE is important, okay? And don't discount it in any way, but definitely what they are saying, go for it.
Okay.
The way it is given out in that spreadsheet, if you look at that spreadsheet, it is quite clear there how much weightage each thing is given.
I think on the whole, I think even if a uni doesn't weigh your GCSE, I think just having a good record will always stand you in good stead anyway. So I think there's no excuse for letting up. So Khalid Bhai had a question. I mean, I have an opinion on this. He says, how important is the university for becoming a doctor? So what is the difference between a doctor from Leeds and Birmingham, or maybe Leeds and Cambridge? So, I mean, I think, like Habib Bhai and people who've been to medical school, I mean, we probably have an opinion on this already, and we know of people. So we have colleagues who've gone to the top medical schools. We have in India, obviously, we have colleagues who've gone to not so well-known medical schools, and I think we've all come out pretty similar to each other. So I don't know what do you guys think of so Hassan's probably the most advanced in this cohort, and then maybe Shami and Abdullah. What do you guys think of how important is the medical school that you qualify from?
As far as I know, in the end, you're essentially guaranteed a job once you get out of medical school. There's some things my dad kind of mentioned to me that you can kind of tell sometimes when students go to better medical schools or worse ones or something like that. But if you just keep the right headspace and you work through medical school in the right way, there really isn't much of a difference at all. Sometimes I guess for really, really competitive specialities, like after you've done your foundation years or whatnot, that maybe weighs part of it, but generally and pretty much all the time, it's just about how well you're doing. And then even after medical school, as long as you get through it, you're essentially guaranteed a job. So I'd say in my head and in the majority of people's views, it doesn't really matter that much as long as you manage to get your degree.
Yeah, Hassan?
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. I think the reason getting into medicine is so hard is because all the medical schools are just equally as good as each other. Like, there's no real advantage of going to something that might have a bigger name than another one. I think everyone that's doing medicine right now would agree. It eventually comes down to how well you do in your medical school, and your exams in the medical school kind of decide more like how good a job you're going to get or where you're going to be placed. But that's a long time in the future. So simple answer, no, it doesn't matter. Just get in somewhere.
Yeah. Safa?
Yeah, I was just going to add that by the time, obviously, all of you guys are in medical school, what's happening now is that in 5th year, everyone's got to sit an exam, kind of like basically A-levels part 2. So again, it kind of doesn't matter. To the sense, like, obviously it might matter in the sense, like, maybe at like a higher ranked uni, you might get better teaching because whatever the lecturers might be more knowledgeable, whatever. But it really comes down to how like you take the opportunity. So sometimes, for example, like newer unis, even though they're not ranked the highest, they're newer, they've got smaller cohorts, they can focus on you more. Whereas something like, for example, Birmingham, there's 400 people in a year. You don't really get any one-on-one attention. If you kind of struggle, you struggle. You kind of have to ask someone. There's no like, so it depends on a lot of other factors. The ranking kind of doesn't really have a meaning, especially now because we're having like that 5th year exam. And like Hassan was saying, and I think Shami, that it depends, well, currently it depends on how well you do at the uni you're at, because currently you're kind of arranged into deciles in 5th year, and depending on your decile is where you get your choice. So for example, someone at let's say Imperial, like let's say they're in like the let's say they're in the lowest decile in Imperial, that might be equivalent to someone at the highest decile in, like, I don't know, Lincoln, for example. The ability might be similar, but that doesn't mean the Imperial person's rubbish or that the Lincoln person is an extra genius. It just means that the higher your decile, the more likely you are to get your preference. So all I was trying to say basically is that, yeah, so like I don't think the uni matters. I think what's more important is your course, that it suits your teaching, and like more practical aspects. So maybe like things like living accommodation, the actual lifestyle, stuff like that is like, especially the teaching for medicine.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Abdullah?
Yeah, I would say I generally agree with what everyone said, that ultimately at the end of the day, you're all medics. And as a doctor, we're all guaranteed jobs by the NHS. But one thing I think is kind of important is that you should look at how exactly the unis teach, because that is probably the main difference. And so, the difference between PBL, integrated, that can not make or break your uni experience, but it does affect how you'll be learning. However, I think probably everyone else who does medicine right now can agree with me in that because of COVID-19, I think all of us have probably really stepped up the independent learning. And simply because of that, I can tell you right now that in reality, it matters less than at least I thought. Because when I started, I thought it was kind of important to go to a medical school, which was, bit higher up, lower up, that kind of thing. I was a bit more into that. But now I realize that actually it really is all ultimately dependent on you, because most of the stuff you'll be learning is yourself. You'll be teaching yourself most of it anyway. So yeah, as long as you get in, that's what matters. And something that we kind of joke about now, because honestly, with COVID, it's like you basically on your own, more or less. Like lectures are there, but really, you're not going into uni anymore. It's all on your own right now. So you're kind of paying for a degree as well. And I think that's something to keep in mind. So do not worry too much about where you end up. As long as you end up somewhere, you'll be fine.
And yeah, I think a prime example of that is Hiba, I think, because Hiba's, I know all of you have been keen to fly the nest and, just leave home, go to university. Hiba managed to get into university and med school and still hasn't been able to leave school a year later.
Yeah, I'm still at home.
Oh, one thing to keep in mind, actually, I just remembered something. You should probably look at which universities give anatomical dissections, because personally, I found that super helpful. And I mean, I don't know if everyone else found it really helpful, but if the university offers it, I found it really useful for my learning. And I don't think not every university offers it in this country.
Do you do like, we saw videos a few years ago about, 3D dissections where you can, holographic things where you can just slice away. And is that happening in any university now or no?
Not mine, but I mean, personally, I prefer the human body.
Do you mean like the virtual, like human, and they kind
of?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was supposed to happen this year, but COVID happened, so no.
Right. Yeah, that'll be cool because that'll take away the need for cadavers and everything. So you'll just.
Yeah, we're supposed to have that, but obviously COVID changes.
Because I mean, Habib Bhai knows all of our first year we used to smell of formalin. All our clothes were like like perpetually smelling of formalin. So that was our cologne.
Khalid, I'll just add one little thing there, especially for the young aspiring doctors. Okay, we are going the American way. In the final year, you will be giving an exam to get your license to go on to FY1, and probably something similar like matching programs. Like in the US, we are heading towards that. So basically, your MBBS degree is a passport to higher learning and to get the license of James Bond, license to kill. So that is where you all are. So whichever uni you go to, make your experience the best possible for yourself, okay, and come out with flying colors so that you're ready for the life after that. That's the important thing.
Yeah, we make it sound
and make it as enjoyable as possible
afterwards, but yeah, there are different experiences.
But that's how it works.
Yeah. No, thanks, Aviva. That's really good. So, any other question? I think this has been really useful I hope it's been useful for people who've, like Alina and all the younger ones who've tried to getting some information about where to go. Alina will probably be on the panel next year, inshallah. Okay, and so I think so I've just shared that link to that group again on the chat box. If you can just join the group, if not, then we'll get that link to you somehow, and be really useful if you could share all of that. Maybe your presentation, maybe your resources on that, and then we'll keep that group for later as well, so people can keep asking questions. We have another session on the 9th, and the reason for that was because one person that I was quite keen to get on board was Ayman Jamal, is Nasir Bhai's son. He's just graduated from UCL. He's in his F1 rotation now, and for the last 5 or 6 years, he's been doing counseling and mentoring sessions for his school in Aylesbury. So he's been doing like mock sessions and proper counseling and sessions. I'm assuming it's similar to what we've done today, but I think individual customized sessions for people who are interested in medicine, and it'll be really useful to have him have his take on how to prepare for things. So if you want, it'll be really useful to have all of you join in on the 9th as well. The link's in the same PDF for the image file that I sent earlier. So just register for that as well. Maybe we'll have a shorter session than this one because we've covered most things. And if people have any new questions by then, maybe we could answer those as well. So I guess that's it. If does anyone want to say anything else or add anything?
Thanks to everyone who joined actually, and especially the students doing medicine and their resumes. That's really useful. I would say, I think after students get their UCAT, then probably they will need some UCAT score. Then probably they will know where they stand. So that will be another point where.
Kashif bhai, aapki आवाज कम आ रही है, थोड़ी सी speak up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
I'm saying that no, I just wanted to thank everyone who joined and gave their experience. What I was saying that once students get the UCAT score, then I think that would be another point where they would need some help to decide because at that point they know where they stand and decide where they can apply actually and where they have more chances of getting an interview offer.
Yeah, so I think the WhatsApp group will be really useful at that point as well. And I mean, we can have another session like this at some point. What time is that? What sort of time are we looking at? What part of the year is that going to happen?
UCAT probably by the first week of October, most of the students would have gone through their UCAT exam. This is what I assume.
And the application deadlines when?
October, I think. 15th October. So I think probably before that they have to decide which university they can apply, and that will depend a lot on their UCAT score.
Sorry, the deadline for applications is October.
Yes, 15 October.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can always we can discuss this on the group and then maybe have another session towards the end of September, maybe. Or
yeah, that will be really. So other aspect is that especially like which university is good from point of view of accommodation or travel and things like especially London University. I heard that yeah, I was saying that for London universities, I have heard that there's issue with travel because first year they get accommodation near the university, but then later on they have to spend like a lot of time just traveling from one hospital to their accommodation and or other hospitals. So
can you repeat that? Sorry, you just cut out.
Sorry, I think the question is that London universities, you get accommodation for the first year, and then after that you spend a lot of time commuting. Is that?
Yeah. So first year you get university accommodation, which is usually quite near university. So after that you have the option of, if you live in London, commuting from home, or like living with your friends in private housing, which is what I've done for the last 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so you need friends in London. Okay.
Yeah, you'll find friends, don't worry.
So Sanania, you've got a year of accommodation there, and then have you got yours sorted already, or is it something you need to do now?
I've applied for accommodation, but we don't find out which one we've got until after results day, which is the 10th of August, I think.
All right.
Some unis are very different with that. Like Bristol was my insurance, so I didn't actually get to select accommodation until after I found out I was going to Bristol. So yeah, it's all very different. And yeah, I'm similar to Hassan in a sense that I had uni-accom the first year, and I'm living out with one friend in like a private housing now. And the thing is, 3rd to 5th year of medical school is different because you'll be in clinical placements. At least I think every university does that. So once that happens, you either get accommodation if it's far out, or you still have to have private housing. But it's very different according to which uni you're in.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like
sorry, Abdullah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for example, Sheffield, they first years normally they take this place called Student Village. So the uni actually has like a lot of accommodation in like specific parts of the city, and so everyone kind of like lives together. It's kind of like dorms kind of thing. But then after that, you can either choose to stay on, but most people don't. They decide to just go private because the housing prices are really good in Sheffield, and so you can really have your pick luxury actual houses for like £96 a week or something like that. Like, it's really good. So yeah, private. Most people go private for us as well after first year.
But I know people who I have comment to make. When I was in Leicester University, some of the medical students, they bought a house together, and when they finished the medical, they sold it and they made a profit.
I don't know about that, but okay.
But that was Leicester.
More idea. Yeah, Abdullah, just Habib, I know you're living in luxury accommodation. Right. Any and this has gone on. I mean, I think I've enjoyed it. I hope everyone else has too. This has gone on for longer than we expected, but I think
just one more question. The messages in our chat box, will they disappear afterwards? Means how should we record them?
Khalid, I've tried this before and it doesn't actually let you.
Yeah. So maybe we can copy paste in our WhatsApp group then.
Yeah, just do a copy paste and put it in a Word document or something.
Yeah.
The thing is, as soon as this meeting ends, these will disappear. So
yeah.
So if someone, I mean, you can't even copy and paste them. That's the trouble. You have to take images.
No, you can.
You can copy paste.
No, you can. You can copy paste.
Because I
can
tried
highlight it and copy it.
Is someone doing that? Or?
I just copied at least 2 messages to keep the record.
Okay. And you've got, can you copy everything or no?
Yeah, I can copy if you want. I thought somebody might not like it this way.
Does someone have any objections? Anyone? No?
Okay, I can copy paste them.
Yeah.
So I think Saad's saying on the chat you can just save it as a file. I think he's just put it there now, so you can download the file that's just been put in the chat, which has all the chats in.
Yeah.
Ah, that's good.
The file is there now.
And on top of that, oh, sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so that's good. So that's we'll just download this file. Thanks, Saad. I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, this is being live streamed on YouTube, so we'll put it on our YouTube channel. And so anyone who wants to refer back to the the presentation, you can do that there. You can look at the questions that have been answered, and Shami and Abdullah, if you could share that presentation on the, unless it's copyrighted, if you can.
Yeah, Abdullah put it on. We made it today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, just as a really last quick point about work experience, in terms of my whole personal statement, only less than a third of it was focused on work experience. Like 25% of it was on work experience. Most of it was on other stuff. And I can send a copy of one of my copies of it on the chat later on. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that in case anyone's too worried about that.
Yeah, I think share as many resources as possible on that group. I think it'd be really useful. Right. So I guess that's it. Any other questions from anyone else? Nilufar Apar, do you have? No. Okay, sorry. So that was fine. Any other questions before we finish, guys? No. Well, thanks a lot, Shami, Abdullah, Hassan, Safa, Sunanya, Haiba, and all the parents. Right. So I hope this was useful, and we can certainly, if you wish, I mean, I'd certainly recommend registering for the 9th of July one as well. That's a Friday evening. It'll certainly be much shorter than this one, because I think we've already got a good idea of, but we'll just get Ayman's perspective on this as well, and maybe if anyone has any new questions, you can bring them to that meeting as well. So I guess that's it, guys. We'll hopefully see you again soon. Habib bhai, aap keh rahe the kuch uska about an Eid meeting? Something. I think this is adults talking now.
Yeah, Eid meeting is something that we can definitely think about and go for.
Yeah.
Weekend after Eid.
COVID ke chakkar mein is there anyone of you, the younger guys, anyone of you who doesn't understand or speak Urdu?
I'm sure they all understand Urdu, but they may not be very good at speaking it.
Fine.
Thanks for that.
Fine. So, कुछ करते हैं. I think वो ये अच्छा रहता है ना. We our annual meetings and things. It was a good chance for you guys to meet each other. They can have. I think we're gone. We're handicapped by COVID. Maybe next year, inshallah. See this. Right. Chale, I think we'll leave this now and let's stop the live stream on on YouTube. And maybe we'll discuss a date, if we have to come back in September, like Kashif bhai said, we can always do that, and we'll decide on that time in the group, and then we'll set something up, inshallah.